Hello, everybody. It's me, Chris Herman, and I am here to speak to you about another great episode of On Deck. But before I tell you about the episode, I do need to take that quick moment to remind you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Herman Agency. Subscribe, ring the bell, and be sure to like and or comment on these episodes. It's very helpful to us. And ringing the bell will also give you up-to-date notifications when we have new content coming out here on the Herman Agency and our podcast On Deck. So today's episode, another really great conversation with my good friend Eric Brown. Eric is the founder and CEO of InSearchX, who main product offering, I shouldn't say product offering, but conversation starting offering is Ask Otto, which is a really different way to connect automotive shoppers with dealers. We cover a lot of automotive technology, marketing technology, his Ask Otto platform, and a lot of interesting things about marketing in general. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, I bring you Mr. Eric Brown. Hello, Eric. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Chris.
Eric Brown,
Thanks.
You're welcome. Eric, you are on deck.
All right.
And we'll begin where we begin, and we'll see where it leads us. So I will start by doing my best introduction of you.
Okay.
Eric, we've known each other for some time,
That's
bumping
right.
into each other at many of the conferences in NADA because you've been working in and around the retail automotive space
Right.
for a long time. But currently, you are CEO and founder
Yes.
of InSearchX,
Correct.
whose primary product offering would be Ask Otto,
That's correct.
which is an inventory-based marketing,
It's an open dialogue platform.
an open dialogue platform.
Right.
Well, let's begin our open dialogue. Why don't you
That's
tell
what
us
it's
a
all
little bit
about.
more about it?
Well, so it's a very basic premise, and that is, the world's moving to voice. Half of all searches today are via voice. And the thought is, most of the friction today occurs in the navigation of the web. All those clicks are friction along the way. In fact, even Google recently is moving inventory, into Google My Business. Why? So you don't have to navigate to the website anymore.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you look at plane tickets and prices, everything's on Google.com. Why? Because the net's inverting to an environment where our machines curate for us the content we want, opposed to us having to navigate to the content.
To find it.
Right. And so we have Ask Otto. And so on the first click of the ad or wherever the call to action is, it might be a QR code in a mall or on a window sticker, whatever the call to action is, that first click moves the consumer immediately in the dialogue. So there's no clicking on an ad and going somewhere and then having to do a search and all that. You basically enter dialogue with Ask Otto, and then Ask Otto, says, "Oh, how can I help you?" Right? "Oh, I'm looking for a new car. I'm looking to sell my car," or whatever it is. And Otto just then takes you through that process, that dialogue, to, do you want to get insurance on this car? Do you want to get pre-qualified? And just walks you through that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, we get a click-through rate. An initial call to action gets almost a 5% click-through rate compared to a 1/10 of 1% in a normal display ad. So it's fun.
For those who are just being introduced to the to the concept,
Yeah.
give us like the the basic 1, 2, 3s. How this gets set up, how it interacts with dealers, and how you guys operate.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. So if you think of Ask Otto as just a conversion platform, and sitting on it is a brand that has a call to action that consumers are responsive to. And so we can put the Ask Otto brand and call to action anywhere. So we have public channels. And so by that, I mean, for example, we just launched in 5,300 hotels on their public Wi-Fi networks. And the way that works is you go to log into the Wi-Fi network in the hotel, and it says shopping for a new car. Find out which car is perfect for you. Ask Otto. You click on that, and then it opens dialogue with Ask Otto, thus open dialogue advertising.
Right, okay.
So that's a public channel. In that case, then we're showing them the dealers who are on our platform. We have almost 6,000 dealers now on the platform. We have their inventory, and we say, "Oh, we think this is the right car for you. Do you have any questions?" "Yes," "Great." And then eventually we connect them to the dealer either with a test drive or a scheduled sales call, a whole variety of ways to doing that. So that's the public channel. And so in that case, we're just taking the audience at large, or the consumers at large, and funneling them to the appropriate car for them at the appropriate dealer. On the other side of the equation is the private channels. And the private channels is where a dealer uses perhaps our tracking code on their website, and we retarget that audience for them with the Ask Auto call to action, because it's getting, a 10x better response than typical retargeting does. Okay. Let alone, instead of a 2% conversion on leads, it's an 80% conversion rate on the people who click on that.
Really?
Yeah. So it's really crazy because they're in dialogue. I don't have to fill out a form. I can literally just talk to somebody. Imagine that, It's like almost going back in time. And the joke we tell is, hey, we put all these people through the maze to get, try this tool, try this widget, try this thing, do this, do that, right? And we hope they get to the end of the maze and talk to our salesperson about a car. Well, wait a minute. Who said they had to go through the maze? We could just take the salesperson, walk him around to the front door of the maze and say, hey, let's just start right here with the conversation. Yeah.
So the customer that comes in, that is exposed to Ask Auto and engages, who are they speaking to? Is it a call center? Is it AI-driven technology?
All the above.
Okay.
So there's, like most AI is being trained by humans. So we're a relatively young company, so a lot of it is human-driven. It's our own folks, or we're connecting them to the dealership, and the dealership is being Ask Auto.
Okay.
Okay. And it, by the way, it's all privacy friendly in the sense that no PII, no personal identifiable information, is passing between the consumer and the dealership. But the consumer is essentially saying, hey, I just let you into my front door, right? You're sitting in my living room. We are now permanently connected. You can consistently send me updates about changes in your inventory or new vehicle recommendations, et cetera, right? And so as a result of that, a lot more consumers are willing to have that dialogue, right? Yeah, so it's either the dealer or it can be a BDC. I won't say who, but one of the major BDCs that represents a couple of the national brands just signed up to be Ask Auto for those companies. Yeah,
great.
For those dealers. Yeah.
Now, we've known each other for some time, and we've had a lot of dialogue about this over the years. How, from your initial concept of it's like 2-3 years now.
A couple of years.
Yeah. How from the initial concept to where you're at now, what has evolved for you? What are some of the things that you learned along the way as you rolled this out?
Yep. So getting the consumer's attention, first of all, so we've gotten better at that, but it really was never that hard. Getting the consumer to say, I have questions about a car. They do. They're just scared to death to ask them sometimes because they have to give up their email and phone, and they're afraid of spam and all these other things. That's why we have such a low lead submission rate, partly. We learned that not all dealers are great at responding to consumers. We saw in the middle of the pandemic, I actually saw messages from sales reps saying, when can you come into the dealership? And I would check, and the market's locked down. I'm like, how is it you're asking them into your dealership when they're not allowed to leave their home?
Are you suggesting that there is a communication disconnect in dealerships?
There's some breakdown in the dialogue sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. So those are things we learn. We learned that we use a quiz often as our first call to action, which is just a series of questions, dialogue with Ask Auto. Hey, let me ask you this. Great. What about this? What about this? Well, consumers want to be helped, right? And so consumers will take that quiz. 80% of them will complete the quiz. It's 5 questions. And just a little background on that too. We built that from post-sale ownership surveys and said, what do you love about this car? What don't you like about this car? Tell us about yourself. And so then we ask people about themselves, and we say, other people like you love this particular car, and you will too. In fact, we have a 90% confidence level you'll be satisfied with this purchase. From that, it's all kind of like my old days at Dadium. It's all that same type of regression analysis, et cetera, that drives predictability of ownership and satisfaction. So we use that in the quiz. So it's a very scientifically based quiz, and then we recommend the vehicles, and at that point we say, hey, would you like to see a Honda Accord? Would you like to see a Nissan Altima? Great. Here's 3 near you, right? Instead of, here's 1,000 near you. Please scroll the page, which, by the way, less than half the consumers scroll a search results page. Right. So if the perfect car for them is below the scroll, they never found it. They're not going to find it without a dialogue, without a sales assist, but they never get there, right? And so our point was, let's start there. Let's just help them find the car. It's really that simple. It's just now with modern technology, we all got a mic on our phone, and we can easily connect everything through voice. Right?
It's so interesting. We've often said, and I've always felt this way, that our job in marketing, advertising, whatever you choose to call it, was ultimately to make an introduction between somebody who's interested in a product and somebody who can sell the product. Right? In our world, it's a car shopper and a dealer, right?
100%.
And
we put all this stuff between those.
Tons. I mean,
of stuff. Like, why?
Thousands of things and
Why?
thousands of dollars and all that stuff in between. Just basically, hi, Chris,
can I
here's Eric.
help you?
Yes.
I was like, you know, do you make people walk around the back door to go into your showroom? No, you've got a door in the front of it, right? But unfortunately, in the digital world, the door's around back, and there's a maze between it and the consumer. And my point is, no, just give them where they can click, feel safe, secure, and have a dialogue about what their needs are as a consumer, and they'll do it. And in some sense, you know, the dealers have chat. They allow the chat activity on this, but it extends it even further out. And because it's Ask Auto, it's a third-party brand, we have the connectivity with the email and phone, and we make that connection, and we have the notifications on their phone, so we can notify them when there's a new vehicle available at your dealership. So that's the other thing we're trying to do here, is not just, you know, if you run an SEM ad or traditional retargeting, you get a click, comes into your website. Your Google Analytics report says you got more clicks, right? Okay, congratulations. Was that your goal?
Right, more clicks.
More clicks. No, that was not the goal. And so we say skip the clicks, start a conversation, because more conversations about cars sells and or buys more cars, right? It's that simple. So remove the clicks, right, and open dialogue with the consumer on the first click, and they'll do it.
And so you're introducing the conversation in a number of non-traditional ways, right? Like you just talk like you're on Wi-Fi networks in hotels.
Right, exactly.
I don't know that any one of us in the marketing business would be like, hey, that's a spot to get automotive traffic, right? But what are you seeing as a result of that?
So we just launched yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So we're seeing thousands of consumers, because what's interesting on a monthly basis, like the Boingo network and the airports and the hotels and all that, during the holidays, there'll be 100 million consumers a month on those platforms.
Right.
It's about 50 million normally, so it really spikes obviously during the heavy travel periods. But so we'll see about 50 million. I don't know the click-through rate on that, but it sort of doesn't matter, because if I get 1,000 out of 5,000 hotels a day, great. That's 1,000 people we didn't have yesterday. Right. The click, it's about how many conversations do we start, not how many clicks do we get.
Right. So it's all conversation based.
All conversation based. They click on that call to action, and boom, they're in Ask Auto. And what we're doing in the hotels is we're inviting them to take the quiz, right? Find out which car is perfect for you. Now, on the private channel I was describing, where a dealer's involved in sponsoring it, or an OEM. It'll be which Toyota is right for you, which Honda is right for you, and then only features the sponsoring person's inventory and make. It could be a dealer group, and it could be which car is right for you, but it's only the 5 makes maybe that dealer group has. And so that's the other interesting thing too, is you're taking one click or one consumer and creating 3 or 4 sales opportunities for the dealership group out of that one, because now we didn't didn't isolate them to the Honda. Oh, here's a Honda at this store, here's a Toyota at this store, and here's a Buick at this store that's perfect for you. Which one do you want to have a conversation about right now?
And it's all the questionnaire that leads them to the vehicles, and then the couple of comparative ones.
Correct. Right.
And then from you guys, the model is you're essentially selling the conversation, right?
Correct.
You're TOing it to the dealer.
Skip the clicks. Buy a conversation. What's worth more to you? Conversation with somebody about a car, or better numbers in your Google Analytics?
Oh, I would just love to have just more clicks and
yeah. And that, that's
more
kind of the whole point,
ethereal
right?
data that we can try to make an assumption from.
And the click rate is going down everywhere. Right? And part of that's because of voice search. If I ask Siri, hey Siri, show me, the deli restaurants near me, what didn't I do? I didn't visit a website.
Yeah.
It was all assembled for me. Even my TV does it now. And actually, it's going to get worse. Amazon just launched a whole line of TVs. It's got Alexa built into it. Like, I have Alexa hooked up to my TV. When I say, hey, show me the weather, it shows me the weather, right? But it's Amazon's presentation of the weather. They're curating the weather content for me.
Right.
I'm not visiting a website. When was the last time you visited weather.com? Right?
I have an app.
You have an app, yeah. And even that, you can just go, hey, Siri, what's the weather, right? So that's where we're going. And why? The guiding principle here is consumers will find the path of least resistance.
Right.
POLR, path of least resistance, polar.
Polar.
All right, I got that from Lori Foster, by the way. She came up with that. So it's pretty good. It's like polar, right? Get people on the Polar Express. Right? I stole that from her too. Anyway, I steal all my good ideas, actually.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, but but the point here is consumers will always seek the path of least resistance. Well, what don't they want to do? Navigate a website. They just don't want to have to figure this stuff out, especially for something you're going to buy every 3 to 5 years or longer, right? It's why the download rate on your portal apps is so low. It's like, why do I need to learn an app for something some process I'm only going to utilize 4 or 5 times in my life?
You indicated that these conversations take form in a number of ways, right?
Correct.
They're people and AI driven with your people and call center, safe to say, or
correct, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
but that it also can be the dealer's own
can be their own staff.
Yeah,
that we're going to watch
chat.
that closely, yeah, because we got consumer experience.
That's what I was going to ask you. How do you manage the consumer experience when when the conversations are not happening 100% under your deal?
Right. So one, Ask Otto can inject into those conversations and offer additional guidance if so we kind of watch over the shoulder of the dealer, and then we'll jump in to use best practice. Again, Lori Foster has been a great help for that.
Right.
A few plugs for Lori. She owes me dinner now.
That's right. Here's to Lori.
Yeah, exactly. But that was her. That's what she did for AutoNation and et cetera. So she's very skilled in that. So we will, we'll jump in and try to rescue if we can, et cetera. But over time, as those conversations, mature, we're recording, what are the top 10 questions on a Honda Accord? What were the top 10 best answers? What yielded the next question from the consumer? Which answers got the consumer into the store versus them going, no, I'm no longer interested in an Accord. I'm moving over to the Camry. And so as that data comes in, we'll have the AI essentially learning from that, and over time we'll recommend the response to the dealer and or just automate the response.
Gotcha. How we're operating in a very unique environment right now, right?
Yes.
How has that changed perhaps how you've approached your business or the growth and development of this?
Yeah. It's really interesting because you don't know how it's changed, because you don't, especially as a young company, you don't know what it would have been like without it.
Right.
I do know early on we were fortunate to get a major pilot with a major OEM that was supposed to launch in March of 2020. And then the 3 markets we were launching in completely shut down. One was in California, one was in DC. I think 2 were in California, one was in DC. And there was no stores, right? And so that all went away. And then that OEM's had a lot of issues since then, but we'll hope to get that going again at some point. But the good news was that made us, look internally a lot deeper and gave us more time to mature the product and mature the call to action with the consumers. And now we're facing an inventory shortage, so that has an impact as well. But in some ways, it might be helping us because the consumer's like, I can't find a car anywhere. Maybe ask Otto. Maybe if I ask
find
Otto,
it for me.
Right. And all I have to do is ask, and I can go back to my latte at Starbucks.
Right.
Just ask the question and move on. Right? I don't have to spend 3 hours on Saturday, opening 16 tabs and calling 3 dealers and finding out if the car's still in inventory. I just ask Otto, is this car still in inventory?
Right.
And we'll even do that for dealers who aren't on our platform. If we may have their inventory from a syndicator, for example, and we'll just call the dealer up ourselves, right? If we have to. It's funny.
You've have a lot of questions, so I want to try and prioritize them in the flow here.
Right.
You've been around data.
Yes.
For a long period of time.
Yes.
And we'll delve into that. But you've also been around automotive. As you're looking at the current landscape of retail automotive, the new vehicle inventory shortage, used vehicle market crazy, service departments needing to be an increased focus. From a marketing perspective, what advice do you have for dealers out there as they look forward to the next 15 to 18 months?
Well, so this is a more maybe esoteric answer than what you're looking for, but I'd say shut up and listen and stop selling and start asking. And what I mean by that, I guess Ask Otto is why I say that. But the reason I say that is ask the consumer, how can I help you? We're here to help you. We know it's hard to find a car. It's hard for us. We know it's getting complicated, right? There's so many different ways to finance a car now. Now we have EVs coming on the market, right? We're actually involved with an EV program that's going to roll out through several consortiums of utility companies. And the reason, what they're doing is basically going to market you should own an EV, so you'll use more electricity. But say you're Florida Power and Light here, they're going to market to their Florida Power and Light customers the ownership of an EV, and they have all this content on what's it cost to charge a Nissan Leaf at midnight versus noon. And then when you want to find that car, you ask Otto. And so we're in the process of rolling that out too. So that's another way we convert new audiences, essentially. Just like we'll talk later about what we're doing in the malls. But anyway, the point is, my point here is, ask the consumer, how can I help you? We see it on our platform, actually. The sales reps who just say, how can I help you? Versus can I get your email address? And right, night and day in terms of the level of engagement they get from consumers. They just want help. They're confused. They hear about inventory shortages. They hear about something about chips. They hear rates are low, but then they're high, and then there's new ways to finance a car. And do I lease or do I subscribe? And do I get an electric vehicle, or do I get what's a hybrid? I mean, just think how much stuff is going at a consumer who's paid zero attention to it until they were in an accident last Friday and they have to replace the car.
It's so true. I think we all assume that everybody's up to speed on this.
No.
Right?
No.
And they're not, because they don't care. If they have a car that is serving them well and serving their family, and then they're in the middle of their lease or their term, they're not thinking about it necessarily. They're not paying attention to what's going on in our market. And then all of a sudden, if they have, for whatever reason, if they have to enter in, it's like, well, what do you mean there's no cars?
Right.
Like we were talking the other day about the fact that I would be willing to bet that there's consumers out there that think this whole thing's a bunch of BS.
Right.
Another way for dealers to
raise the margins.
Raise the price.
Right.
Oh, there's no cars. Bullshit. How could there not be? There's no cars.
Right. And then, the other question they're asking themselves, because this goes back to the pandemic question, I don't drive to work anymore. Right? Or me and my wife are both working from home. Do we really need two cars anymore?
Right.
And there's this thing called Uber. Maybe I can just have, even those questions. Now, I'm not sure they go to the dealer necessarily for those answers, but that's adding to the equation. That's a multiplier on top of all this other complexity that's relatively new, right? And by the way, the EV thing's just going to make it incredibly, like you and I kind of know how the combustion engine, ICE engine works, right? We know how that works, internal combustion. But a lot of people don't have any idea. Is it the same plug-in for everything? I mean, just think how many questions there are. And plus, I want to get into this, but I was just listening to a podcast the other day. There's a whole bunch of legality stuff that's completely different for electric vehicle ownership than from a gas, in terms of liability and insurance and everything else. I didn't know that, but
I didn't. Right.
Like when a charger sets a car on fire, who's responsible? The charging company, the utility company, the auto manufacturer, right? Never thought about that one, right? So anyway, so there's so much complexity coming at the consumer, and they can't answer those questions with an ad that says 0% financing this Saturday. Hurry in. Right. That's not doing it.
Right.
That's not answering the questions they have. That's the bottom of the funnel. They're still lost. And well, by the way, where's the healthiest margin? When you move somebody all the way through the funnel instead of just waiting at the bottom and trying to close with the best deal.
Right.
So I'd say help.
Okay, so good, because that's a good next segue. In all of the conversations that I have here on deck, it always comes down, and the reason why I'm doing it face to face, right, is because I have a particular enjoyment, and I think a lot of people have a particular enjoyment for human interaction, right? I mean, we live in a world where it's so easy to be distracted by everything. But to be able to
my TikTok's chirping.
No shit. I know. It's true.
Yeah.
But we live in
By the way, I like your dance moves on TikTok. Very well done, Chris. I knew you were a musician, but I had no idea you had those moves too.
Oh, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to start doing the Herman.
I mean, you got to do it. Like, I mean, we're running down every channel we can right now, right?
Right.
And that's the world that we live in. But at the end of the day, it's to create some sort of, meaningful face-to-face human interaction.
This thing we're doing right now, 10 years ago, that wasn't happening, right? Or not, 5 years ago, it wasn't happening. 3 years ago, right? Now this is more content for people to consume.
Exactly.
Right? And so, yeah.
Well, but to your point in saying, what should dealers do? Yeah, listen.
Yes.
I've been starting to say that I think that, number one, dealers are going to have to be really engaged and listen to their customers, because customers are going to start getting frustrated, right?
Well, they're smarter now too.
They're smarter, but they're not fully up to speed on what's going on.
Right.
They're going to enter into what is normally a stressful period of time for them in terms of buying a car, right? That's not people's favorite thing to do. Now there's all these new complexities, right, that can create new challenges.
Right.
And that's all happening at a time where dealers have been fortunate enough to basically kind of sit back and just rake it in over the last year.
Right.
And so what kind of disconnect is going on there between, I mean, I've talked to some people and they said, a friend of mine was out looking for a truck at a huge lot in Texas, and they had some.
Right.
And he said, Chris, I was out on the lot looking at every car for 30 minutes. Not a single person came out to say hello. I had to walk in and they were all sitting back at their desks. Right?
Right.
And I think that might be a little bit more common than some people are willing to admit. And so if dealers are going to adjust to this new environment, I think you're 100% right. Number one, they're going to have to listen.
Right.
They're going to have to engage with human beings, right? And be able to say,
ask questions.
I'm sorry, this is a challenging situation, but we're here to help you.
Right.
How can we help you best? And we'll tell you what we can do and what we can't do, and we're going to do our very best.
I always say silence is golden, so shut up and get rich. And that's really that. Just ask you, if you think about how busy a consumer is and how many things are demanding their time, the fact they showed up on your lot, right, or even your website, or even Engage Ask Otto, the first question is, hey, why are you here? And they're going to tell you, well, I'm here because I really need this. Great. I'm so glad you came to us because that's exactly what we do best. Let's get that done for you and be done. When I used to train advertising salespeople, decades ago, I'd always say the first thing when you sat in front of somebody in their office, say, look, I know you're very busy. Obviously something in our earlier discussion or something you saw made you think that your time would be well spent with me. And I want to honor that. So can I ask you real quick, why am I here? What was it that made you say, this is going to be worth my time today? And they'd say, oh, I thought you could do this and this. And I'd just go, you're absolutely right, sign here. Right? I'm being a little facetious, but that's the point.
But essentially, you're giving the customer the opportunity to tell you exactly what you need to do to sell them.
It's a lot easier to help people buy things than to sell people things.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Help people buy cars. Don't sell them cars. In fact, I'm going to be esoteric here, but I've had this conversation in various sessions that I've done, is like, how do we make our living in the car industry? Oh, we make our money by selling cars. No. If you flip the mindset and say, no, we make our money by helping people buy cars, it completely changes your approach to the consumer interaction. I'm here to help you. How can I help you? What questions do you have? Not, I really need to move that one in the corner because it's been there for 60 days. That's not a problem right now, but it's been there for 60 days and there's a spiff on it for me if I do it, right? What's that do? Create conflict.
Right.
Right? And people don't like to spend money in conflict, and if they do, they want a discount for that conflict.
You have a very unique approach to business and to any conversation that I've had with you, in the sense, well, you do have a data-driven mind,
yes.
And it seems that you have a very mathematical mind,
yes.
But you also have, to use your word, an esoteric approach where you sort of look at it in a little bit more of a philosophical type of way. Where was this developed? When did Eric
I was
develop?
abandoned as a young child in the Nile, and no. Wow, Chris. And let me see what my therapist tells me. No, I'm just kidding. I don't, I think, I don't know. I just think I've always had a sort of a contrarian approach to looking at the world. And I guess somewhere in my past that I was rewarded for that and found enjoyment and satisfaction in that. And so, like any human, I just kept going down that path and, doing it more and more and learning more and more. And there's a lot of great books out there too, on, basal analysis and all this. And a lot of it's math too, interestingly enough. But there's a great book out there called Think Fast and Slow. I'd encourage you to read it because it talks about how consumers make decisions. And even gives research on how to do a menu in a restaurant and pricing. You have anchor pricing and all those kind of interesting things. But the one thing about humans is they are very complex, but they're also very consistent. They're always seeking the path of least resistance. And if they have friction, they want to be rewarded. So I use the Apple iPhone as an example. So you could get an iPhone, you could get a mobile phone for free. But yet, people lined up around the block would spend the night to get that phone. So that's friction, having to spend the night outside, right? There was no friction to get a free phone, but they're willing to line up around the store to get an iPhone. They cost $500. Why? Because they felt that friction would be rewarded. So there's two components here that I'm always paying, and this is what we're focused on incessantly at Ask Otto is, what's the path of least resistance? And when there is resistance, maybe it's regulatory, I have to get this information from you in order to answer the next question, whatever, can we reward them? And so that's the other thing we've built into the platform is gamification. And so we have underlying an API with Amazon Rewards that if you take certain behaviors, we will reward you with Amazon dollars, essentially, that are redeemable when you purchase the vehicle or when you test drive. So it works very much like your typical incentive program, except we're rewarding you for behavior through the path of purchase or along the path of purchase or down the sales funnel instead of waiting for you to get to the bottom of it and rewarding you. We're basically taking the cookie crumbs and spreading them through it. But they're there if we encounter friction. Maybe you don't want to do that credit app. Oh, great. Well, here's $10, if you complete the app today, that you can later redeem when you test drive the car on Saturday, right? That type of thing.
And these are the ideas that you guys come up with.
Correct.
As you're continually refining the product.
Correct. We're continually refining the relationship with the consumer.
Right.
And we're still not, I don't think we're great at it yet. We're just better than most. And we've made entry very, very easy. And so we get that 4.5% click-through rate, because we have a compelling, oh, fun, I get to take a quiz, right? It's a game, right? So, yeah.
I would imagine, for an entrepreneur or somebody in our space that has an idea, listening to this would foster a lot of questions themselves, because I have some, right? For example, so you come up with an idea and you've got an initial plan of like, here's how I think it's going to work. And then it keeps rolling out. So now you're talking about, okay, well, now we've got connectivity with Amazon for points and rewards, or we now are on wireless networks in hotels, right? These aren't things that just happen overnight, right? Like you have to come up with the idea, and then it's literally like, well, who the hell do we talk to get that to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen?
Shut up, because silence is golden, and get rich. It really is just, and I'm not always good at it. In fact, a lot of people yell at me because I'm not as good as I should be. But it's asking questions and being fearlessly curious. And, I actually have a link to my calendar. Anybody can set an appointment on my calendar if they want. I will take it. Because I have another corny saying, opportunity knocks on every door, just not everybody's listening. And even some of those who are listening are too lazy to get off the couch and go answer it. And so I've always just had the mindset, going back to whenever, that I'm going to listen, try to understand. I'm not always good at that either. I tend to respond faster than I understand. And just keep listening and keep answering the door, because you just never know what's on the other side. And the gamification came from a conversation with my daughter. We were having, I was at her home in Nashville, and we hadn't added gamification yet to Ask Otto, and it's in the platform. We haven't activated it in front of consumers yet because we're getting a baseline on consumer behavior without it, and then we'd start to look at where do we apply the cookie crumbs, right? Where should they go? And we're getting close to that stage right now. I was sitting there in the kitchen, I'll never forget it, and she said, Dad, I was talking about SEM and how inefficient it is, something we learned at Dadium. The average lead cost is in the hundreds of dollars. If you for cost for a conversation out of SEM is thousands of dollars when you look at the, how many actual leads turn into conversations about cars. Anyway, she said, well, when I click, if I click on one of these ads in Google, what's that cost a dealer? And I said, well, $4 to $7, but let's say $5 on average.
Right.
And she said, what? She goes, how do I get that money? I'm the one clicking after all. And it suddenly clicked in my head, pun intended, that oh, wait a minute, we're rewarding a third party for somebody else's behavior.
Right.
Right? And there's probably a way to reward the consumer directly for the behavior, but I also have to do it in a way that the consumer's not just exhibiting the behavior for the reward. It's not Pavlov's dog completely, How do you train a dog, by the way? I mean, or any animal for that matter. Mm-hmm. And so that's when we figured out, oh, wait, we can use rewards. Who's the biggest platform for rewards? Amazon. So ring, 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 Amazon. We're already working with them in terms of advertising on their platform and using Ask Otto to convert Amazon shoppers into Otto intenders. And sure enough, we could put an API together. So we did that. And then how do I qualify these consumers? Oh, well, you can earn these rewards just like your airline miles. If you have an airline, in fact, I remember flying back from Nashville, and using my Southwest card, and suddenly dawned on me that, oh, wait a minute, I can use this card all day long and it will generate points. But there's no cost to Southwest for those points and no value to me for those points until I use them to get a plane ticket. Right. So our reward system works in the same way. I can get rewards for getting pre-qualified or submitting my trade information or answering 3 questions about why I like the Audi A7, right? Data that we syndicate on the backside to the manufacturers, et cetera, right? Because we're in dialogue. It's like an always on focus group. So anyway, doing that as well. And so anyway, the point here is I can reward all day long, thousands of dollars if I want to. But then it's the redemption event that I pull down at. So I might have 1 million airline miles and use 25,000 of them to get a ticket. That's the only mileage
cost. That's the cost.
That's the cost. And it's really the wholesale cost of the airline ticket even, right? So the same thing. I might generate a couple $100s of money going through the path to purchase, being rewarded for the behaviors, right? And then I go, oh, I want to test drive this car. And then that test drive will earn me $25 out of the 100, and so I redeem 25 of the 100. I still have 75 more that maybe the dealer wants to grab onto and use for, clear coating or whatever, or their first oil change to make sure they come in. But the point is, it's the redemption and where the cost is, and so to the dealer in this case, they're paying $25 for that test drive, or not, right? The other thing they can do, because it's dynamic, they can say, I only want incentives on cars I can't sell. I don't want them on every car on the lot. Right? Or I only want it for people that are 50 miles away instead of people who are 5 miles away. Or I only want it the last week of the month. And so that's the other advantage, is you can use the money you would invest typically in gift cards and all those kinds of things to dynamically align them with your market objectives.
I'm assuming that because you just made a comment about how you're able to inform the manufacturers of some of these. It's almost like you had like a 24/7 focus group.
Yeah.
So,
and dealer could ask those questions too. We have a program for that too, right? Tell us about your test drive experience.
Okay. Are there any specific takeaways that were surprising to you about what either customers want or how they're responding through this avenue?
The most surprising thing, and it's not really, is how quickly they will share their email and phone with the dealership. It was, because I thought, they're going to be on our platform and they're going to be communicating anonymously, through their Ask Otto ID.
Right.
But usually about 3 back and forths in, they're pushing a button or they're posting it in their dialogue with the dealer. Here's my email. Here's my phone.
But probably only because they're actually just having a conversation. It wasn't asked up front.
It's trust.
Now there's a trust.
I often use the analogy of the stranger on the plane. Remember when we used to fly?
Yeah.
And you'd sit down next to somebody on the plane, right? And a lot of times you'd hear the life story, or you share your life story, right? You get some fairly deep conversations sometimes, right?
Right.
Well, where would that conversation gone had you started with, hey, can I have your phone and email, please, before your first and last name, and maybe your social security number?
What a weirdo! No,
right?
Of course
Bing,
not.
can I get a different seat, please?
Exactly.
And that's what we're doing on websites for the most part, right? We're asking for all that information before we say, how can I help you?
I just sit and think, you're talking about paid search and the inefficiencies in paid search, and you're starting to see a lot more of that dialogue out there. I know Brian Pash recently came out with an updated report that shows.
Which, by the way, that report, we did the same report 10 years ago at Dadium. The numbers haven't changed. We said that 10 years ago. 80% of the clicks were for not retail purchase.
Yeah, and we all knew that too if you just listened to the damn phone calls and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, but think, excuse me, as somebody who's run a marketing company that did tons of paid search for a long period of time, still do, not as much, but the amount of money that we spent that we all thought was like, oh man, this is, we're so smart. Yeah, we're in traffic. Look at all this traffic. Your bounce rate is good. Your pages, your per session are good. Your time on site is good. Conversion ratio is good.
More time on site's a good thing. More time in the maze is a good thing. I don't understand that.
You want to sit on a dealership's website all day long. But you think, and this is just natural because digital came along, and it's just like we've gone through all these iterations of what works, what doesn't work, how do you do it, and who's gotten rich? Google and Facebook.
Absolutely.
Now
and they got so rich they quit paying commissions. Think about that. The logic. See, you talk about contrarian views. The logic in that one doesn't make any sense. Like I'm committed in my company. I want to be the minority shareholder in my company because everybody else is making the company work. They're the ones doing the work. I want to reward them, right? And so I'm thinking about Google, like, oh, you just got more and more revenue. You got so much revenue that you don't have to share it anymore. Wait, you were willing to share it when you didn't have it. Now, does that make any sense? No. I guarantee, as our revenue grows, in fact, you'll see it in our commission plan for agencies, as your revenue goes up, the percentage you get goes up, right? Because you're working harder, and I got more to share. So, right, my bills are covered faster. So, but. Anyway, don't get me started on that. Sorry. It's just a principle thing. It's like, you're really rich now, so you can keep more of your money. No, it's the other way around. You created this value, share it, right? Don't suddenly start globbing onto it all.
So, we live in a world where data is just, more and more important. You can't escape it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you founded and or started a data company called Dadium.
Yes.
Right? And bring us through that a little bit into what you're seeing with modern day data, right? As somebody who was
so it's interesting.
Pioneering in a way?
Yeah. It was, it was funny too at Dadium. I had that idea in 1996 and I didn't even get to it till 2009. But partly because the tech didn't exist, you didn't have broadband, and or if the tech existed, it was too expensive to monetize it. But so first off, data's become like water. You can't operate without it, and its value is largely driven by the use case. So whether you're washing a car or dying in the desert, that determines the value of the data. I'll have the value of water. It's sometimes data. Sometimes people get. I'm trying to think of the right word, too obsessed with the data. Like a lot of times you kept collecting data. We see this at Dadium. We try a new data source and it would move the needle a little bit, but not enough to change the value or the outcomes. And so we see that. Third-party cookies are going away. I mean, the biggest trend with data right now is the walled gardens, right? The Apples and the Googles saying, it's all ours. Facebook, all ours. And so, again, Ask Otto is a bit of a response to that, giving the dealer ability to sort of operate around that. But, I mean, and just sort of at Dadium, what I saw on the data, we were collecting consumer behavior and we were scoring it, basic regression analysis, Phillips-Perron theorem, if anybody's curious. And we would score intent and consideration, and we could predict with a high degree of accuracy what somebody's going to buy.
Based on their behavior online.
Yeah. And so we were watching that behavior, and one of the things we'd see is less than half the people were scrolling on a search results page. So, and we would know, we could see in the data, they're likely to buy a Honda Accord for this price. That dealer's got one. They never saw it. They never got to the bottom of the page, right? They never scrolled. There's 4 cars above the fold, and that's the only ones they saw, and none of them happened to line up, right? So as a dealer, what kind of struck me was, with 2 things. One is that you're a passive victim in a lot of cases of the consumer's behavior. There's no incentive there for the consumer to behave in a way that's going to, they're not, I had a dealer one time, Tony Rhodes, Gun Automotive, said to me one time, I'll never forget, he said, we are largely victims of the fact that consumers are not professional car shoppers, to your earlier comment, right? So they don't know how to do a search all the time. They don't know what criteria to put into the thing. That's why I say, just ask them, how can I help you? And so we'd see the path to purchase fall apart, break down. People, again, that maze analogy, they get stuck in a corner, and And there was always a lot of stop and start too. That was the other thing. We'd see them shopping a year before they made a purchase, and in between every months they didn't shop at all. Right? But anyway, so that's the other things that jumped out at me, is that consumers need more guidance than what the websites can give them. And of course, how's our response to help the consumer with more guidance on the website? We put more stuff on it. Let's just give you more street signs to confuse the crap out of you.
Right.
But anyway, and then the other, so there was that aspect of it. And then the other thing, just from a data guy, I thought, what data could I have that would really tell me what the consumer is thinking? Oh, it's the conversation between the consumer and the local sales rep. When they say, what do you think of the blue? I hate the blue. You couldn't see that in clicks. You kind of had, because they wouldn't click on as many blues as black, but sometimes people would click on 7 F-150s and 3 Nissan Altimas. You can't just do basic math and say, oh, they really want an F-150, and not Altima, sorry, Tundras. Is it Nissan? No, what is it? Nissan, whatever. What's
Toyota Tundra, Nissan
Toyota Tundra,
Armada, right?
Armada, yeah. And they'd say, oh, they clicked on more F-150s, that's the one they want. No, the reason they clicked on somebody, they couldn't find one they wanted. And after only 3 vehicles over at the Nissan site, they found one they wanted.
Found what they wanted.
Right. So, and you could see that. And so that's why the dialogue is so important. And so that's obviously partly what we're up to as well, is we want to mine that dialogue, start to understand, what is most compelling about that particular vehicle. Is it like we think it's the MPG? Maybe not. Maybe it's just got really cool, taillights.
In the world of automotive marketing, where do dealers turn to for data? Like where can they turn to at this point in time? If Google is,
well, what's the purpose? What's the outcome they're looking?
Well, okay, let's say, let's go with the basic. They want to sell more cars, and they want to put their message in front of more specific new vehicle shoppers.
So I would find a really good partner like Herman Agency to thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. To manage the data in the front end and getting consumers in there. And I'd focus on the consumer experience in the dealership with the sales team. And in the dealership, when they're on our website, when they're in dialogue basically with our sales team. How many sales fall apart because one of the things we do, because we heard this from dealers listening, and we heard it from consumers, is I'm sick and tired of going in the dealership and having to tell my story 3 times and again. So everything that happens on our platform is stored against a QR code. And so when I walk into the dealership, if Sally's not there, and because she's not working today, they can scan the QR code and see all the conversation with Sally, see what offer was made, see their shopping preferences, see their trade information, literally everything that's happened with that dealership before.
Which is better than having to tell the story all over again. But it's still somebody else going, okay, wait a second. So what you said was,
it is true.
And I'm not downing it, but even with technology, there's
yes.
It never ceases to amaze me how complex we've made things to just.
Well, and truthfully, the dialogue with Sally should have been to that point. I don't work on Thursdays. Can you come in on Friday?
Right.
Or really, I normally don't work on Thursdays, but I've enjoyed our conversation, and I'm really excited about helping you get into the right car. I'll meet you there on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. In the world of data-driven, specific transactional marketing, right? Like that's sort of where everybody wants to be. Is there still space and or a need for a dealer to communicate to their marketplace as a whole, essentially saying, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do, and here's why you should consider doing business with us?
Yes. Because humans are still humans, and they still develop biases. And those biases often are informed by their neighbors, their friends, and family's experience, right? And what they see in advertising, whether they recognize it or not. It's interesting at Dadium. One of the things we used to have Time Warner as a customer, and we had an integration with I forget the name of the system now. It is basically the thing that manages the flights for the TV commercials across the cable network. And we would look, and then we had code on those clients' websites, and we would track when the commercial was running and when what's going on with traffic and inventory searches and what kinds of inventory searches on those sites. And sure enough, I remember one was for Volvo. I forget the model now, but that model would peak right at or right after that when that TV commercial would run. So there's clearly still a broader message influence there. But there also has to be top of mind awareness, especially as we go to voice search. So what's interesting is, again, half of all searches now are with voice. I can't ask a question of something I'm not aware of. I can't say, show me the best F-150 near me, or what's the gas mileage on F-150 if I don't know it exists.
Right.
And I may not know it exists because it never showed up in my TikTok feed, or I don't, right? So I need some sort of passive awareness, whether it's billboard, whether it's TV, radio, or any number of things. There needs to be some sort of passive awareness created so that I know when I go to do my voice search that that's one of the options. Unaided awareness, right? That's the big thing, right? Same thing is, if you're in dialogue, or Ask Otto, for example, is in dialogue with the consumer, and we say, have you considered an F-150? We're counting on that they have some idea what an F-150 is, right? Now, one of the advantages of being in dialogue opposed to being in navigation is they go, what's an F-150? And you get that from them, where they just avoid the click otherwise, right? They don't know what the vehicle is, or not familiar with it. So at least this way we can say, hey, have you considered an F-155? I'm making that up, but they, oh no, I didn't know such a thing existed. Well, let me tell you why I think it fits you so well, right? Based on these other things you told me. That doesn't happen when you're navigating the web. They just go somewhere else because they don't know.
Because they don't know
what that is. They don't know what that is. I'm not clicking on that. That might blow up.
Right.
I might get COVID.
Where does all the way up to Elon Musk? You've got people talking about, AI. And what do they call it? What are the conspiracy guys on TikTok? They call the when computer technology, AI technology surpasses. It's called the
synchronicity.
Is that what it's called?
I think synchronicity.
There's another word that I'm thinking of. It'll come. Yeah, which they say is 4 to 5 years. Computer, based learning is going to surpass humans. 4 or 5 years. And of course, there's a lot of concern about that. We've all seen the movies over time, and
right.
where does it potentially go? But
I'm not really human, by the way. I'm just a robot.
Well, you and Elon.
I'm first generation.
Are you?
Oh, yeah.
First generation cyborg.
Uranus. Yeah. Because I just pulled that out of your. Never mind.
There you go.
Yes.
Boom. A little comedy right there.
Yeah,
Is that how you kept him entertained on the late night shifts on the K. Joplin?
That's right. KFSB.
Yes.
Rock radio.
Many people may not know that you were an overnight DJ.
No, you can't say it out loud because I was breaking all the rules. I wasn't technically licensed.
They might come get you.
That was filling in for a drunk guy that couldn't get to work, basically.
Well, listen, we all got to start somewhere, right?
That's right. I was better than the drunk guy. That's a high bar.
There's probably a trophy for that somewhere.
Congratulations, Eric. You're better than the drunk guy.
You're better than the drunk guy.
I think that's what my last girlfriend said, actually. But anyway, you're better than the drunk guy.
Congratulations, sir.
Yes.
Okay, seriously.
Yes.
In the world of marketing, we move to voice technology, and AI continues to go. Like, where does this continue to lead to when you because you're talking about frictionless to the best of your ability.
That's what we're all about.
Frictionless experience. What is the end game of frictionless? Is it the chip in the brain where somebody just thinks it? And is that where it goes?
So I don't think there is an end game, and I find this actually sort of fascinating because I think about it all the time. Sadly, which probably makes me less than the drunk guy. But anyway, it's never frictionless. So let's take Amazon for example. Was it 3-day or 5-day? I don't remember exactly where they started. 3-day, let's say 3-day delivery. Nah, nice. Wow, that's great. Wonderful. Love 3-day. Oh, well, now I got to have 2-day. Now I got to have 1 day. Now I got to have same day. Let's take water. Okay. Well, look at that. Running water out of the sink. Woo-hoo! We're really doing something, right?
Right.
And then look, it's actually in the refrigerator door. Oh my God. Oh wait, that's not good enough. I need it pre-bottled to come out of the refrigerators. Right.
I need a filtered pre-bottled. Right.
Phone. Oh look, this phone thing's a lot better than that telegraph. Right. All I have to do is walk over to the wall. Oh man, I can't walk over the wall. I got to have it in my pocket, and I need to do 12,000 other things for me too. Right. It's movies, right? Look, I can go to the movie theater. Oh, well, no, wait, I can watch it on my TV. Oh, no, wait, I can go to Blockbuster. Oh, no, wait, I got to have Netflix. Oh, my God, I got to have Netflix in my phone. right? And be able to stream it anywhere I want to, right? And I mean, it's just endless,
right?
There's just
everything's getting closer to our body, more accessible.
Yes, and it's just, but as soon as it gets there, we're gonna be like, oh, why? Look at the watch,
right?
It's consumers will always find the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is always evolving, because as soon as we get, that path, that road's no longer dirt, it's paved. Oh, well, great. How do I get this in a hyperloop? How do I get this thing to go 700 miles an hour instead of 70 miles an hour, right? Drone, I mean, it's never ending. So I don't think the frictionless part ever ends. I think it's just part of the human condition, and these are all just intermediary steps along the way.
Right.
I sounded like the drunk guy just then. But
well, but this is the kind of stuff that people who drink and sit around in bars talk about.
I know.
Right? Like
it's fascinating.
It's because it is fascinating. Like, where does this technology continue to lead?
Right.
We live in a very interesting time in history right now, of which
it just continues to lead. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it just continues to lead.
So you just think it
just goes.
Right.
And actually it's not a technology, it's many technologies, and the consumer or the human is picking which technology gets traction, and that's the path we go down. So if you think about technologies, there's like you had Betamax and VHS. I mean, there's and so we just sort of pick them, right?
The consumer picks it. These options are presented.
They decide for themselves which has the greatest return on investment, which is my time,
right,
and my attention, and that could be Uber, and in some cases it's Uber today, and I want to have my own car for this purpose, right? Actually, I was trying to get a chair and a filing cabinet from you, and it won't fit in my car, so there's some friction there. So
right.
So less friction actually is probably for me is, rather than borrowing somebody's SUV, is getting on my phone and having Amazon deliver it, even though I might pay twice as much, But I'm being a little bit facetious. But the point is, everybody's friction is different too, and that's why we're going to have lots of different technologies. Right? Some people, it's a lot of friction to get on a plane. Other people, it's just, rote. They just do it. Right?
Yeah.
Don't even think about it.
It's like, I'm going to try and summarize this, and I feel like I always come back to this, thing of you've got all this wonderful and rapid development of technology, mm-hmm, that in many ways is put there to make processes easier for us to utilize, right? Mm-hmm. And in the car business, as we've said, and I've said this with many people, you have this clutch point, like it's like the clutch plate, where technology meets the human.
Yes.
In the store,
right,
and often it's just like there's such a disconnect,
right, between
these two things. Ultimately, I guess I'm sitting here right now. Like, if you could buy a car just by that one, arrange the finance in a click, boom, 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 click, e-DocuSign, boom, 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 and the car shows up at your house. I would imagine most people would just opt to do that at some point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, and there'll be it's a bell curve. Mm-hmm. There'll be some on the right side of the bell curve. You just like the process, and they like the sort of the engaging the other human in the process. Well, and then there's some that no, it's a utility for me, and therefore I want the least amount of friction as possible. And I think some of the friction there that you talk about though is just because the dealer is trying to sell the consumer a car, and the consumer is trying to buy a car.
Right.
And those two things don't always line up.
Right. Yeah.
And so you get the friction. They're like, I've got this great technology, but you can't use it without giving me your email address. And you're like, as a consumer, you're like, but that's not the purpose of why I'm here today, is to give you my email address. I'm here to ask you for help in buying a car, but you won't give it to me, right? So I'm going somewhere else.
When you decide, whenever it is, to take a break from the lab that is your mind.
Yeah, I wish there was. That's where the drunk guy comes in,
right? Yeah. How does Eric veer out into the world to ease some of these thoughts at times?
Well, so I think we shared this a little bit ago. I know you're in this world, music, right?
Yes.
So I've been a guitar player, singer, songwriter. Used to tour years and years ago, and all that fun stuff. And that's escapism, right? It's just picking that thing up, There's I always laugh and say there's no better therapy than picking up your guitar, at least in my world. And so that's when your brain goes somewhere else, and AI and consumer behavior and all is it a simulation or not? And all that stuff goes away. Yeah. Unless you write a song about it. Yeah.
That's maybe I'm sure there have been and there will be, but I agree. It's nice. You got to have things that take you away from it in order for you to be able to come 100%. Back to it fresh too. You can't just be thinking about the same thing all the time and wear you out. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny too, is often, like I was sharing a story with my daughter, right? That was an insight that didn't come from a lot of deep thinking, didn't come from, a lot of research and studying and being on the web and reading books, and I do, and listening to podcasts, I do all those things. It was just that off the cuff, question from a daughter. And that gave me a different perspective. And that's where is, shut up, get rich, because just people will say things to you that you just didn't understand before that.
You're so right too. And that tends to come a little bit with age, where you start to listen more and you start to notice the little, breadcrumbs that have been dropped before you, where you go, oh wait, that's interesting. How come that happened in this? And then you start to, that's been a large part of our evolution here too. And what I continue to want to do here, there's new ideas that come in and you're just like, it just came out of somebody else.
So another corny saying that is that, that's when you start living and stop earning a living. And you start, listening and paying attention to what's going on around you, because you've put aside the pursuit, and start to understand it's about what you create and not what you make. Yeah.
Should we get a notepad of that? I feel like there's been
we should. There's five. Probably I've got a whole. I do have a notepad full of them, and so. Anyway,
Eric, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you,
Chris.
For
always
down.
Enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, you're looking good, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. As are you.
Thank you.
You still getting out to I know you were getting out in the ocean and getting some sunrise action at times.
Yeah. Still playing the basketball. That's keeping me young right now.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Well,
good.
Here's to you. Here's to good health and continued success.
Thank you, Chris. Same for you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye now.
All right. See ya.